Welcome back to Fear and Beer, a Halloween Horror Nights podcast. Join us as we venture year-round into the fog.
Make sure you give us a like and a follow on your podcast platform of choice. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube page where we upload every episode in its video format, and maybe a few other surprises as well.
Make sure you're following us on social media to keep up to date with our newest haunted content.
I'm Nick.
I'm Seamus.
I'm Jamie.
And welcome back. We are in the midst of our 1 week until HHN Podathon. What day it is, I currently do not know because I don't remember what day I'm posting this episode. This is what happens when you record 8 episodes completely out of order for all the crazy HHN fans that just gobble this stuff up. But this is a different episode. This is a fun one. This is like such a hybrid episode of just like different interests coming together into something that is honestly pretty similar. It is from the Fear and Beer cast today, just myself. Seamus was having some technical difficulties, and Jamie had honestly probably nothing to add to this conversation because she doesn't really partake in it as much as I do, or Seamus does. But alongside me is friend, horror connoisseur, HHN goer, professional wrestler, and not just a professional wrestler, but also one that dabbles in the evil horror realm of wrestling. So if you want somebody to talk to about this whole Wyatt 6, can this thing happen? Is this legit? Yeah, this is the guy you call Rob or Ryzin. Welcome back to Fear and Beer.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be back on, and what an amazing time because I can't tell you the last time I was this excited. I mean, we always get excited for HHN every year, but this year seems exceptionally more exciting, not just because of the WWE stuff, but I mean, the entire layout looks amazing this year.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, there's nobody better to call for this. When I was kind of tossing around ideas for episodes for the 1 week, I was like, all right, well, I want to do something wrestling-y, I think, just to kind of shed a little bit more light on the conversation. Obviously, I had uploaded my HHN homework video for the Wyatts and Bray Wyatt and Wyatt 6 and how it can work and stuff like that, but I figured a full-on episode is more than doable, and I think it's helpful for others to kind of get a better understanding, because we'll talk a little bit of the Wyatts and Bray Wyatts, but we're not going to get into it crazy in depth. This is more just a conversation of horror in wrestling, because these two, whether you are familiar with one or the other, if you're familiar with both, then you already know that they are kind of like, I don't want to say direct siblings, but cousins.
They're
at
synonymous
least.
with one another for sure.
Absolutely. So I guess before we get started, why don't you, I'll pass the torch over to you, and you can kind of give people the rundown a little bit better than I did of kind of where you're at in your career, what you've done, what you're going to do, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, well, I am a 22-year veteran of professional wrestling. I started when I was 17 years old, and I have had many changes into my character, but almost all of them had some sort of horror component to it. The one that really launched me was when I became the Reverend of Sin, and I took inspiration from a lot of things, Beetlejuice for humor and the band Ghost for the aesthetic, and really went through with this Reverend of Sin concept where I had my hair done up in horns, and it was, you know, definitely the launch pad, as I would say, to what my career would become. There's actually a lot of crossover with Bray Wyatt and things like that, because for those who don't know me that well, I had a lot of crossover with Matt Hardy when he was broken and then woken. So I was integrated into House Hardy and that universe, which has a lot to do with Bray Wyatt and all of that from their time as tag team champions in the WWE. Mm-hmm. I spent 2 years during the pandemic era of AEW, and so most people know me from that, where I was still the Reverend of Sin and did a lot of like horror-based stuff on things like the Young Bucks being the Elite, and again, just my overall character was showcased through 40 different matches through my time with AEW, and now I have moved into a ringmaster type character that actually garnered a lot of inspiration from Halloween Horror Nights because of my affinity for clowns. And it was about 10 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, that I had first been introduced to Jack when I moved here to Orlando. And he had done his, I think it was called Carnage, Carnival of Carnage show, something like that. It was a stage show, but I was enamored with it, and I was like, if I ever alter my character in any way, shape, or form, I kind of want to go that direction. So instead of doing the clown, I went with the ringmaster, and there's still a lot of inspiration from that, but it's all laced in horror. Sorry for the long-winded response, but that pretty much summarizes it.
It's what we're here to talk about, and I had two things, I think, while you were talking. One being, go and check out, obviously, your pages. Make sure we follow those and plug those as well. If you do pay attention, you might see some videos that you're not going to see me on it, but I was there.
The director, the editor, I don't even know if I'm pointing the right way. On me, I am.
Somewhere, this way.
But wherever he is. But yeah, I mean, absolutely amazing videographer and editor, and just, one thing I will say about him, and not to, take this off on a different tangent, but all of the videos that really showcase the next evolution were filmed and edited by you. And it was our mental collaborations that really have made those big deals. So I got to thank you for that as well.
No need to sell me anymore, but keep on going. Go.
Yes.
No,
a round of applause.
It's just such a, we got to blend our two worlds of horror and wrestling. And it was just such a fun experience, and doing the whole ringmaster persona was, again, dipping even more into the wheelhouse of Jack, and it just made perfect sense. But I also did want to point out, and stats are funny, win-loss records are interesting.
Yes.
And I wouldn't bring this up had I known that not only do you track this, but you were putting it out yourself. I believe you hold an AEW record, if I'm not mistaken.
I absolutely do. I hold the record. I don't think it'll ever be beat at this point, because...
And records are records. Before we say it, records are records.
But I have the losingest record in AEW of all time. I am 0-40 in AEW. I never won a match.
It's impressive.
It is very impressive.
Nobody else can do that. Nobody has ever done that.
Nope.
That's just, but on a serious note, though, too, it's just like, I don't know what else they're looking for at this, like with certain people. It's a whole
I don't know either.
business,
I mean, that would be a whole different subject. Yeah. But yeah, it's, I felt like I presented everything, and you even assisted in a lot of videos that I brought to the forefront to the office itself, which included like a hostile scene when I lost to Fuego del Sol, in which I tortured a poor innocent soul, like hostile style. But again, maybe they weren't fans of horror, but
who knows? But either way, going into the subject of horror and wrestling, like, again, the experience is there. You've been around, you've seen it. Obviously, you don't start wrestling at age 17 if you're not a fan for life, essentially. So when did you start? Like 10, 5? Like, when were you introduced to wrestling?
Literally, I can't ever give anybody a timeline, because it was as young as I could think. I could visualize myself, and whether that's some Mandela effect, something I've made up, I could see myself in the crib onlooking and seeing, wrestlers like the Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior, because my family, my dad and my brother, were kind of into it in that time. I was born in 86, so we're talking right on the cusp of everything becoming massive. We're talking Hulkamania, we're talking the rise of the Ultimate Warrior, we're talking Macho King Randy Savage, Jake the Snake, Rick Rude, all of the colorful characters of professional wrestling at that that time, it was impossible not to become obsessed with everything that they had to offer. And then, I, of course, collected all the action figures.
Oh, yeah.
So I was obsessed, literally from as early as I can remember.
Yep. And then some other questions I did have about like having this horror persona, and we'll get into the various ones throughout the years that are, obviously the Undertakers and Kanes. Like it's just, but there's not a huge staple of horror wrestlers, like that creepy style gimmick. And obviously, I think in this day and age where, the whole, not to use terms that I'm not in the crowd, but like the kayfabe is kind of almost non-existent today's day and age just because of technology, right? Like social media, it's just, you can't, it's nearly impossible. And there's a couple people that I think still do a pretty good job at keeping their character and like who they are as a person like hidden essentially. But I can't imagine that this horror-y style character is something easy to portray, because you have to make it believable enough to like somebody buys it, but not too over the top where they're like, oh, this is just, I'm tuned out. Like somebody like The Undertaker, for as crazy and fun as it was, like I don't think if The Undertaker was coming up today, I don't think it works, because you would be able to see too much of Mark Calaway or the real person behind The Undertaker. You wouldn't buy it. But back then when we're watching it, like there's no Twitter, there's no Instagram, the only time you see The Undertaker or Mark Calaway at all is on screen as this, character. Yeah. How hard is it to really try to like find that line and dance on it?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, you're absolutely right. Today, this day and age, it's completely a different animal, and you have to go along with that, and the fans, they kind of have to suspend their belief a little bit. Whereas you're right, any documentaries or anything that you see of The Undertaker now, because he's come out of his shell, he'll tell you stories ad nauseum about different things that he did to protect that character, wearing all black constantly, wearing the eye makeup, seeming dead to anybody as he was going from airport to airport. He literally had to live that persona, and bless him for it. That's amazing. Yeah, right. But no, today's day and age, there's actually a lot of horror-based characters, but you have to kind of blend your personality in with the horror character. It's going to be very hard unless you are fully committed to present a character that is so believable, which I think is why Bray, he did probably the best version of that, even though then you could see, like, his wife, you can't really hide from the fact. So when they had their kid and like he's kissing his baby and like having that intimate, moment, that was out there. So again, it was hard. It's hard to hide, but you just got to find the way to marry the two.
Yeah, and I think the perfect example of what he did, and even somebody like Finn Balor does great, where it's almost a split personality, right? So like if he's the Fiend in the ring, like, oh, he reverted back to Bray. Like now it's Bray like walking around talking like the Fiend's not here. It's kind of, a split personality kind of, where Finn Balor does the demon. He doesn't do it as much, but it's kind of it's a spectacle when it comes out, but it's not expected to be there 100% of the time. And that's a smart way to be able to hide that character and sort of shelve it for when it's appropriate, whether that's on-screen vignettes to make it more believable, or in the ring where you're not walking around shaking hands with people. You're kind of just in there and out, and now the Fiend's gone. Like it's just its own thing.
Yeah, so absolutely. And I think the only way you would be able to really pull that off is if you were like a masked character or something this day and age, where you could be protected by by being anonymous, and being able to portray that, on one social media and have a completely different life outside of it.
Yeah, really the closest semblance of that, I would say, would be like luchador wrestling, where they are masked up, and that's like I think I don't know 100%, but that's an aspect and a pride thing of hiding the, like you said, their anonymity, and people don't necessarily, I'm sure close people to them know who they are, but they do a very good job at concealing their identity to kind of not break character, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree, and like they do a good job of that. Like there was like Triple Mania that just happened, and like La Parka, they've reignited La Parka too, where the original La Parka had passed, so they are able to put a new guy in there, and they even had him come out of the ground, did this whole kind of zombie type thing, came out to Thriller, like it was a whole thing. So again, but. Yeah, that still doesn't take away the fact that there are wrestlers out there like Vincent, he was in AEW, or Shotzi Blackheart, who, embraces that side of her love of horror and stuff like that. So there are still a lot of us, but yeah, we definitely have to kind of play our public persona as well as our professional one.
And it is funny, like you mentioned Shotzi. I feel like there's a handful. Well, I guess horror is probably big with like a lot of wrestlers, but it's like they don't make their character like horrific, but you can tell their love of horror. Like there's like little, like whether it's gear or lines that they take from movies and stuff like that. I feel like it's their personality is out more, which is tough, because I feel like you get a lot of wrestlers where I don't want to say vanilla, but it's kind of just like first name, last name, and that's kind of it. But we've seen horror fans almost, not horror fans, but wrestlers that are fans of horror be able to merge the two a little bit more recently without taking it to that level of Undertaker. Like they're not a zombie character or a vampire. No, they just have like little nods to it a little bit.
Yeah, and to that point, I think that it's very easy to spot those who are also in touch with their love of horror because of their names. So when you go to the performance center or anything, you are able to present a list of names when they change them. So then you have guys like Dexter Loomis, who had taken inspiration from, of course, Dexter, and then Loomis, of course, from the Halloween franchise, and marry those two. And there's a ton of other examples that I can't think of off the top of my head, but there's a Gacy out there in NXT. Yeah. There's so there's a lot, and again, those are serial killer type, but yeah, there's definitely a lot where they're like, oh, I could take and kind of marry the two and then like make my own character based out of that. So
yeah, so I guess getting into sort of the history, like I said, I prefaced this by, this is more of a discussion where we're just kind of going back and forth. We're not saying, oh, on this year Undertaker start, but really, like, it did. I sure there's people before Undertaker that were in that horror realm. Off the top of my head, I don't have a whole lot of them. I mean, Kamala was sort of scary.
Kind of around the same era, but
similar timing.
But the one that came to my head, but again, he never really made it to, worldwide fame, was like Kevin Sullivan was big out here in Florida, and he had a satanic, like during the Satanic Panic, he had a very Satanic Panic kind of character where he would, have the black cross on it, and he would do his his character work and abductions, cults, all of that kind of stuff. But again, that never really hit the mainstream. So I would say, arguably, The Undertaker was the first mainstream star that was based in horror.
Yeah, and he sort of shifted a little bit. Like, he did for a while the whole Undertaker thing, but then he sort of went into like the Ministry. I think that was like a little grouping that he had. And then obviously he switched up a little bit in the early 2000s to like the Badass American or whatever.
American Badass. Yeah.
Kind of like a little blend.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, that was right when we're talking the internet age. So I think he had got to a point where it ran its course. He couldn't really kayfabe being the dead man anymore. So American Badass was his true to self that he was able to start bringing out: the biker, the attitude, beer swilling, that that guy. And it came in a great time with Austin and all that kind of stuff. So the horror at that time had kind of went by the wayside. Even Mankind had become more of a spectacle character, almost not all there. Whereas when he started, he was very padded room, boiler room, scary, psycho guy.
Yeah. And from Undertaker, we kind of got the demon brother birthed from that character in Kane.
It's gotta be Kane. It's gotta be Kane.
And another giant masked man. I guess the mask, for me, helped sell it even more. Because back when I was watching him as a kid, I'm like, oh my God, that's Undertaker's brother. Undertaker burned him alive when he was a kid. This is crazy. Like, how is he a wrestler too? And it's like, yeah, they're not brothers. Sorry, I'd hate to break it to anybody like 20 years later, but like, it's it was just that timing was just, that was kind of, I feel like Kane could have benefited more being like starting when Undertaker started, because he had that window of, like we're talking about, that window of believability.
He was there, but he was Isaac Yankem DDS.
Yeah. So, he was the dentist. Yeah. Sir Isaac
so
Yankem.
He was there. He did a lot of different character shifts until they finally were able to go take him away and repackage him because of a similar height, similar build. And just before we get off of old school Undertaker, one of my favorite childhood memories was SummerSlam, I want to say 95. Oh God, the internet's going to hate me if I got that wrong, where it was Undertaker versus Undertaker.
Okay, yeah.
And that was insane for my mind to comprehend, because they had an opportunity. So Undertaker had gotten beat by Yokozuna and went away. He was beat in a casket match, so they all the heels are the bad guys. They covered him up. He was like, I will never rest in peace, and he was gone for months on end. And they had a $1 Million Man was able to buy his way into resurrecting the Undertaker. So then you had this Undertaker come and do everything you would think of as the Undertaker: mannerisms, look, tattoos, the whole 9 yards. And then Paul Bearer had returned and had set up, oh, that's not the real Undertaker. And then ultimately culminating in them facing off at SummerSlam. And again, it was like, for somebody that age with that kind of imagination, there was nothing like it. Like they looked so similar that it was believable, at least to my young eyes.
Yeah, and that's even another side character you brought up that we didn't even talk about, was the whole Paul Bearer of it.
Yeah, without Paul Bearer, I don't know if Undertaker could have been what Undertaker was, because he was such an eerie mouthpiece, and Taker was basically a mute for most of the time, with the exception of "Rest in peace," but as a closing line. But oh yes, without Paul Bearer, Undertaker. Without that, I mean, he was eerie. He was very scary. And they had a funeral parlor. They would do funeral parlor like interviews where he would smash the guy and throw him in a coffin and all this great stuff. I mean, cutting edge stuff for that era.
Yeah. Oh, definitely was. And like you said, like, just his ability to sell that character is really what did. And it was perfect because it was in the same wheelhouse. And of course, kind of hitting it too much nose on the head with name Paul Bearer, but like, it's cheeky and funny, and still, like, they did the makeup on him. They made him look like really pale, and I remember they had his eyes like kind of browned and blacked out, like he's just hasn't been sleeping, and it was horrific. It was a scary image, especially as a kid watching it.
His heavy set guy, kind of on the shorter end, and I mean, again, just that voice, the inflection, everything that he did, and then of course the power of the urn. So Undertaker was led by the power of the urn. So again, I really don't think anybody went to that extreme in order to sell a horror-based character like the Undertaker. So he will always be goated, so to speak, as the number one horror guy, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and I remember times where like they would have like lightning strike, like his powers weren't necessarily defined, but they were definitely outworldly. Like he would literally just like strike lightning on people. It was like, okay, he
could control the lights. I mean, he did a lot of cool stuff. So
yeah. But then we had Kane and stuff like that, and I really, after that, I feel like there was we had like a little taste of it when kind of Edge and Christian came up with
The Brood?
Gangrel as the
Yeah.
Brood. And this was, and like I mentioned earlier, like nowadays people aren't necessarily vampires and stuff, but these guys were very vampire. I mean, they had the teeth, the white shirts, sunglasses on.
Spit blood. They came out of the fire, like via the floor raising.
Mhm.
You know, they again such a great time, and we're talking like mid to late 90s at that point. 98 I think is their breakout year. But yeah, you're talking about like three guys who looked like they could be in Blade, or they could be in any of those kind of movies. The Lost Boys, you know, stuff
And
like
that's,
that.
I was literally just searching it because I'm like, when were these years? Like, so Lost Boys was 87. I forget when Blade was, because I was like,
Blade
like,
was definitely
it was
right,
like-
probably around that time, late 90s. I'm gonna guess.
that's what I was thinking. Yeah, 90, 98. So that's
So
got to be
perfect.
around the Brood. So like, it's something, they obviously don't bring up and coming wrestlers like this in this big persona if it's around something that's not popular in normal popular zeitgeist. So vampires must have been like in the know at that point, or popular enough for them to give them the nod and be like, you know what, this is a doable thing that will probably get over with the fans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't remember the name of it now, but Gangrel actually the name Gangrel actually came from a game that was very popular, a board game that was based in horror as well, in that time, because I remember I would go and play it. Vampire the Masquerade.
Oh, okay.
So, which is very similar to, I guess it would be kind of Pokemon-esque, or you know, some of the Magic the Gathering, kind of that era. So, you know, you could join these covens or whatever. Anyway, we could go on a whole different tangent, but
I know, right?
Yeah, Gangrel that name had kind of come from that. As a matter of fact, he had to license that name from them when they started that whole thing. But
Makes sense.
now I'm nerding out, so we got
that's what this whole episode is all about, just us nerding out over just random stuff. But I mean, from the Brood up until like maybe Boogeyman, I don't necessarily remember any other big horror-y gimmicks that stand out tremendously. There might have been a few kind of like one-offies, but other than, and Boogeyman for me, I feel like was more of a side shtick kind of thing.
Yeah, I think he was intent to be scary. I think they wanted him to be like the next Undertaker. But really, yeah, his character because you don't have the opportunity to really make him scary. You can do as much production value as you can, but when he goes out, he's Marty Wright, and he's just a jacked, tall, amazing guy that's like super uber positive too, by the way. So like he would never, meeting him multiple times, because he's actually from Colorado, where I'm from. Just super nicest, kindest guy you'd ever meet. And so it really made it no sense for him to be the Boogeyman.
Yeah, now he's smashing clocks and eating worms.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but yeah, he went into that, and then it feels like it was really Bray. Like there was a big gap, and I think what made the Wyatt family stand out for me so much is that it was fresh in a sense that we haven't really had a main roster, main event, like horror-y style gimmick, which is obviously what, you and I and people in this community kind of gravitate towards. And they did it in such a believable way, because he wasn't supernatural. It was given the sense of this backwoods preacher, which, I mean, I don't frequent the backwoods all too often, but I'm sure they are out there. But it was believable. It's not like he was using brainwashing powers to get these people to do anything, but it was almost, it kind of tiptoed on religion a little bit. And that's religion and horror kind of go hand in hand as well.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, because that is a powerful motive to essentially get people to do your bidding, or really do whatever you want, because that is, I mean, it happens all the time with religion. It's just, there's followers, and it was fresh, and it was believable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth, because he was like building a cult based in this kind of religion, because Bray was an amazing speaker on the mic, and you believed what he said, and he had that, again, that backwoodsy New Orleans style inflection into his voice, and the way that he sold the stuff he said, it made you a believer. And so you could see, and then, of course, the people that had surrounded him, with the beards, and they would wear the animal masks and stuff
Creepy.
like that.
So,
so good.
creepy.
And they would come to the ring with just the lantern lighting their way, and always allude to this Sister Abigail that was almost like their higher power. Like, they never really used a god per se, but they used a lot of it's Sister Abigail kind of directing this group. But yeah, no, absolutely amazing stuff.
Yeah, and I feel like if that character was in like the 90s or 80s before there really was the internet-y stuff, it's like I feel like it would have cheapened it, because I feel like with Rowan with like the little goat mask or whatever, they would have like tried to have him wear an actual goat head and try and say he was like like a goat hybrid-y like character. But like nowadays, where it's like we know that's not going to happen, just this creepy little mask is well and fine enough, because it shows just how like tapped they are.
Yeah, well, and there were so many movies around, and again, not saying that he had borrowed off of those, but there's movies like Strangers, and I think it was Who's Next or something like that, that had like kind of the animal masks. So there definitely was a lot of that too, where they wear a mask, and they're scary. The mask is just kind of to hide that the dark passenger inside. What's beneath the mask is almost more scary. So again, they did an amazing job, and hyper believable for sure.
Yeah, and it's just that, for me, other than that, or since then, it's really been offshoots of him, whether that's Bray Wyatt and Firefly Funhouse, Wyatt 6, that's all still in his mind and his world. I haven't really seen too many people get over as much. Now, I know, I believe you've worked around her, but Abaddon kind of does similar, like blends horror a little bit more than, like you said, Shotzi and Dexter Lumis. Like it's if there was like a line, like people that showcase their love of horror is on this side with Shotzi and all them, and then people that really fully dive into it, it's kind of the Abaddon style character, where it's that step further. And
with Abaddon, they were, maybe, and this is just speculation, but again, going back to my own experience, they were so convincing as the living dead girl that you almost didn't know, or AEW may not have known what to do with it. So like the only big major television appearances were around Halloween, where they would be able to be in some sort of like Halloween style deathmatch type stuff. Where I think, man, I had pitched to the office where I would be the Paul Bear, essentially. I would be the mouthpiece, I was the sinister reverend, since they were a mute character at the time, grunts and stuff, but that was it. I was like, I could be that mouthpiece, and I could still wrestle. So then you have mixed tag, you have a lot you could do there. And I pitched that as well. It was so synergistic. There was so much synergy that it shouldn't have, it should have went that direction, but it didn't.
Yeah, no. And that's the tricky part too, where you want to go all in to sell the character. And when you are this zombified style character, well, they can't go out really and cut promos. It does limit you, but you're limiting yourself, because that's the character and the way you decide you wanted to try to portray this, because that's your love of it.
Yeah, but and again, with a good writer, an exceptional writer who, especially who's tapped into the horror genre, you can do a lot with that. And then again, if you had a mouthpiece, and I'm just interjecting myself into it, But at least I would have made sense.
Correct.
I could add the book and all that stuff. And I pitched a lot of stuff. Again, they were all based in horror. But and I don't know if our the weaves that we are weaving will lead us there. But I was around there during the Dark Order and stuff during AEW, where I had at one point was supposed to be in the Dark Order, and I had already preemptively put this whole plan in order where once Brody had passed, unfortunately, I was going to pitch having the book of Brody, because I was still the preacher, but I would go purple. I would wear purple hair, purple sash and everything, and I would have the book of Brody. And if anything got out of line, or if the Dark Order had lost, or if I needed to guide them to their whatever championship matches or whatever direction we needed to go, I could be like, in the book of Brody, Brody had once said, and been able to go over that. And I think that would have been absolutely amazing. And again, just laced in horror, and it would tie it into the Bray. And it's like, that would be one way where the full circle, because AEW and Brody Lee was still had very, a lot of ties to Bray, who was in the WWE. So it's like the perfect way to kind of mesh. Yeah, there you go. The bridge to the two.
Yeah. And like Dark Order again, too, that was similar in this sense. And it gave me a lot of the Wyatt family vibes, not by like the grungy, preachery, backwoodsy nature, but the like leader cult-like
mindset. And everybody had numbers, so like even they would add them to their names. So you had like, Alex Reynolds and some of these guys, Preston Vance, and so they put a 10 in there, so everybody had a number. So you were Evil Uno was number 1, and you had all these people. I was actually, number 15. I was supposed to be R15IN, so still Ryzin, but number 15 of the Dark Order. But again, it's things that never came to fruition, but they kind of moved them into, and maybe that was part of it, they kind of moved them into a comedic angle, because their stuff was getting over so huge on being the Elite as goofy. We're trying to be scary, but we're really just kind of cartoon characters living in this environment. And without a Brody Lee to kind of hit them with papers and tell them they're they should stop fucking off, if I'm allowed to say.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
There's no rules here on Fear and Beer.
Perfect. But yeah, so if there was, once he had passed, there was no he was the guy that kept him in line, as the exalted one. So
yeah, it's sort of just kind of, unfortunately, that's how it panned out, But other than like characters, we've also had elements of horror in wrestling. I think most significantly matches, and obviously a lot of these stemmed from characters like The Undertaker and Kane and stuff like that. But I mean, we had casket matches where you would have to literally throw your opponent in a casket and shut it. Buried alive matches where there would
very good,
just conveniently be a tombstone with a fake grass and a shovel with dirt, and you got to go literally bury your opponent,
throw them in, get the dirt on them.
Inferno matches where you just literally light your opponent on fire, from thanks Kane to everybody that's been burnt in an Inferno match. You got one guy to blame, I think.
Exactly.
But yeah, like this way of not just having your character be this horror character, it's a way to blend it that step further, and like introducing outside gimmicks like that really horror in wrestling. It's just one and the same. Like you can make it work, and it's worked successfully for years, for decades at this point.
Yeah, and without going over each individual one, like there's a lot that people forget. So of course the casket match, the Inferno match, Hell in a Cell is obviously a big one that's kind of based in horror. But man, they had Boiler Room Brawls. They had Raven, never brought it to the WWE, but he had like a Clockwork Orange match. So I mean, it goes on and on, just depending on the character and stuff, but always based in horror. So, even things like the First Blood match and stuff like that had to have elements of horror. So,
yep. And then we've sort of, I don't want to say resurgence, because we don't see them often, but like you had mentioned earlier with the Hardys and the Hardy compound, they had their whole like cinematic match, which kind of led us down a rabbit hole of a couple others that I really enjoy watching them, because it is that perfect. And I know it's not as it almost comes off too polished to be a wrestling match, because that's kind of the beauty of wrestling, is that it's essentially it's one take. Like you're in the ring and that's it. Like there's no hiding, there's no redos, it is what it is, and you have to pivot when something goes awry or whatever. But in the cinematic matches, it comes out sometimes a little too polished and choreographic, because you can see that, you know how it's being filmed. But once you suspend disbelief a little bit, like you had the compound matches, then you had the Wyatt compound match, you had the Firefly Funhouse match with John Cena and Bray Wyatt at, I think it was Mania. I feel like there was some other ones, but like it just came off again this way to blend hard. Oh, like I think Taker and AJ Styles, I think they're
the Boneyard match at WrestleMania.
The Boneyard match,
because again, and man, that would have been a phenomenal way to get it. Phenomenal way to send Undertaker off, to actually put AJ versus Taker in a ring would have been amazing, because the way AJ would have sold and performed for Taker, who was starting to have limited abilities. By far, that was a dream match that we were robbed of through the pandemic. They did the best they could with the Boneyard match to kind of send Taker into the sunset, but man, that could have been so much more. But to touch on that real quick, you're right. One thing that Matt Hardy will always get credit for, as once he became Broken Matt Hardy in TNA Impact, was bringing cinematic matches to the forefront and actually popularizing them to the point to where people would be like, this is something I do want to see. And he had made the entire world, something that people would gravitate to. And I have been in a deletion match, so I have a firsthand experience of being in a cinematic match, which is cool, because I came in right at an unusual time, because he had done quite a few, 2 or 3 with TNA, the original deletion match, and Decay or Delete, with the Decay, which was again a horror-based character, but in another company, the Decay. Different ones. And then he went to the WWE, and then him and Bray started doing some stuff together. They became tag team champions together with the Woken deletion. And once Matt started kind of moving his way towards AEW, that's where I come in. So I was actually the in-between, a part of that bridge from getting Matt to AEW, in the sense of he had all the different Free the Delete was the name of the television series, and you could still watch him on YouTube, but it was him being normal, wishing he could be woken again, wishing he could be broken. We went to the Lake of Reincarnation, where Sister Abigail was, per Bray Wyatt, scooped up Sister Abigail out of the water, put it into his swimming pool, and he baptized himself essentially, and came back as Woken Matt Hardy. Finally, he was able to get his powers back as Woken Matt, but then it was he needed to test his skill. So me, just being an innocent bystander and a good friend of his who was helping him retrieve these waters, he threw me into the water itself, and Sister Abigail infected me. So what you saw coming out of the water was Ryzin, the sinister preacher, and then it led us into our deletion match, in which the Dark Order, who they were yet to be named, came as masked men and assisted me in defeating Woken Matt Hardy. So I am, again, with all these weird statistics, being 0-40 in AEW and this and that, I'm the only guy to ever successfully win a deletion match. But again, cinematic matches have, I get all excited talking about them, because it is really an opportunity where you could be a pro wrestler, but you could also put your love of horror and cinematography in general into it.
Yeah. And it's funny too that, I think all the cinematic matches at this point were bred from horror. I can't think of a cinematic match that wasn't in the realm of horror. with Woken Matt Hardy, it still has that semblance of horror. All the Wyatt stuff, Firefly Funhouse, that's all horror. Even Taker with the Boneyard, like it's that scary aesthetic. Like it's just I really enjoy those matches, even though, like we said, it's more polished and whatever. But I think it's just so fun because I like to see the creativity.
Yeah. And maybe you can't, because I can't ever. I don't think there will ever be a rom-com match.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
So horror is the only genre that you can really make, marry the two, and that's why I think they have been so, hand in hand over the years. Because you can't really do I guess you could maybe do a war-based one with like military or something, but
still that's dicey sometimes.
So
like a Fast and the Furious action-based match.
Yeah.
Just cars wrestling.
As long as it's better than the ride at Universal, that might work.
Oh yeah, exactly. That doesn't take much. No. But and I thought that was a fun little touching stone as well, because those were, if you aren't familiar, just YouTube search any of those matches, because it's fun. And if you're somebody that maybe isn't super into wrestling but you like horror movies, that's a good kind of gateway drug into wrestling. It's definitely, like it's in the name, cinematic. It's a movie match, but it's still wrestling at the core. But it does allow to have these extravagant, like extra things happen, whether it's stunts or sets or bizarre characters, like you said, being reborn from the water of Sister Abigail in his pool. Like it allows you to do so much more.
Yeah, and I mean, there was so much magic that he had on the Hardy compound. Like, I was attacked by a boat named Skarsgård, that had a life of its own, a persona of its own, and and just of course House Hardy, of course, Rebby Hardy, and Gothic Baby and stuff like that. So they were always very Addams Family-esque. So again, all based in horror.
Yeah, and that's really like kind of moving into the next, I guess, mini topic of sorts, but like going from cinematic to like movies and like horror and stuff like that, it's really is like at its core, wrestling is essentially theater. Yeah. Like it's as close to, I'd say it's the closest thing to like live theater that's not live theater, if that makes any sense. Like I don't know what else would sort of be that in between. But that's where the overlap, I think, really can blend easily, because if you do get these characters that you kind of buy into, because when the Wyatts sort of came up, that's when I was sort of like in and out, but it reminded me so much of like your House of a Thousand Corpses and your stuff like that, where I was like, ooh, I got to tune in now. And it's close enough to that movie theater going experience or theater experience that it buys you back in. But and then like we've seen wrestlers too, like obviously most prominently, obviously I'd say The Rock and Batista, but that's their avenue. They go from wrestling to acting, and we've seen two, I think off the top of my head, wrestlers go into horror movie, or there's probably more, but Kane with See No Evil was
Kane being Kane, basically.
But it's
unmasked Kane, when he kind of had this Uncle Fester look to him. And then who was the other?
But then most recently was, it's just a side character, but Chris Jericho being able to be in Terrifier 2 and 3, which is that love of horror, again, bleeding into all these other people in the wrestling community, where they're like, okay, I kind of want to just play around in the sandbox. It's close enough for them. I mean, when you're doing promos, the line reading, remembering stuff, like that's very beneficial when stepping onto an actual movie set.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a lot of, funny enough, if you Google it, there was a lot of B movies that were like zombies versus wrestlers and things that like obviously never went to the mainstream because they were BCD films, but like, we can't go any further without at least mentioning Roddy Piper.
They Live. Yep.
They Live might have been the best horror-based movie that a wrestler was in, because I mean, it still lives in infamy today. And, and again, like he was exceptionally amazing in that. Yep. And we're talking, that's years before, any of this that we're talking about now. Yep. So.
Yeah, that's John Carpenter right there. That's, and I was just gonna say, I was waiting for you to finish up to be like, oh, I can't believe I forgot Roddy Piper. I was wearing a They Live shirt earlier today. But yeah, and that's one too where Jamie loves that movie, and I don't think she even knew he was a wrestler until like she like started looking into it. It was like Roddy Piper, what the heck? Like, and I was like, oh yeah, the wrestler Roddy Piper. Like it doesn't come off as that because obviously they're wrestling and acting are there's similarities, but it's not one for one. So some people can do it, some people can't, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But you couldn't tell in that movie that he was a wrestler. Like
no.
he nailed it.
Yeah, and he definitely was somebody who had that almost like a thespian background or an acting background. Whereas then you had the years of Hogan in Hollywood that I love the movies, but that's because, but like a Suburban Commando and a Mr. Nanny and some of these are not the greatest films. And so I think at that point they were like, well, maybe wrestlers do not have the acting chops, or they could be good side characters. Like I know Liv Morgan was recently killed by Chucky in the TV series. Yep. So again, there's always a lot of crossover, but then it really was, in the later years, like a Cena or a Batista or something where they go, wow, these guys can also act.
Yeah. That's one of my hot takes that's completely off topic. I think out of all the wrestlers, I think Batista I think he will win an Oscar, and he will be the first one. I think his acting is phenomenal.
Absolutely. And I apologize. I was checking my
good.
Ring camera.
Again,
good. Now we're talking about spooky stuff. I heard my dog bark, and I'm this late at night. I was like, what is going on
there? But I guess one last fun thing, and I don't know if you've seen this yet, so this might be more of a recommendation for you, but it's on Shudder. I believe it was a Shudder original, but it was with Chris Jericho. It's called Dark Match.
I haven't watched it yet. I do know what you're talking about, though, and I'll give it a whirl at some point.
It's fun,
maybe on a flight, or something where I could just download it. But I was going to say before I was rudely interrupted by my Ring camera, Batista. At least I don't think Cena has, but Batista has had such wide range that he did do one horror movie, Cabin in the Woods. Is that what that was?
Yes.
I think that's what it was.
Knock at the Cabin.
Knock at the Cabin. Knock something. But anyway, that was actually pretty good, showing his kind of more spooky side. So
yeah, and obviously it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie. I'm going to go see it. I thought it was really, really good, and I know he's will ride for me. I will ride and die with him. I don't care what he puts out. I'll go see it. Like I will never. He gave me Sixth Sense, Signs, Village, Unbreakable. He's good for me. He could ride the rest of his career out doing, The Happenings, and I'll be like, no, he's still good. I still respect it. I ride with him. But Dark Match was a more so. I mean, this wasn't just a wrestler in a horror movie. It was a horror movie about wrestling.
Yeah.
And it's like this just bizarre, culty abduction fight to the death in the ring kind of thing. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like potentially Chris Jericho produced it, or at least was an associate producer, financially probably put some money into that. Ironically, Jericho and I, like, the way we got along in AEW was our love of Kiss and our love of horror, and I was wearing a Terrifier shirt when he had, when we really started clicking, because then we started talking about, him being in 2 and the pandemic's prolonging the release of it and all of that stuff. But he actually introduced me to Darcy the Mail Girl when she was at one of the tapings, and was like, oh, you need to follow this guy on Twitter and, social, because he, is just like us. He's a big horror buff and all that kind of stuff. So that was cool. And then Butcher and Blade were also in AEW, huge, especially Bunny, huge horror fans as well. So that, again, I mean, you cannot, even if they aren't presented as horror people, there is a ton of horror loving professional wrestlers.
Yeah, it runs deep. And we did we covered Dark Match for a Shudder Sunday, and that was my claim to fame, that Chris Jericho reposted it. I was so psyched.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was like, oh, he at least for a second knew we existed. For 1 second we were on the mind, but I guess
But
to kind
he
of
goes to HHN every year, so I wouldn't be surprised if if he has caught wind of you. And of course, he has his very successful podcast himself. So that's the other thing, and I'm sure we'll get to it. But the amount of professional wrestlers, and partially because Florida is the home to probably 80% of professional wrestling's rosters.
Yeah.
But so many professional wrestlers go to Horror Nights. They look forward to it, and it's not unusual to be rubbing elbows with a Cody Rhodes or a Matt Cardona or a Chris Jericho who's in line at one of these events. So.
Yeah, and that kind of like to bring it full circle, I guess, and you did the perfect little segue of HHN. It was only a matter of time, I think, before we got this. I think, unfortunately, with Bray's passing, maybe it hit the brakes a little bit. Because I think if he was still with us, I think this would have been fast-tracked a little bit more. Yeah. But, I mean, if anything, maybe by a year or two, because we're talking about stuff that is currently extremely relevant in the Wyatt Six and blending that into a haunted house attraction. And this one really took people by surprise because it was rumored, it was kicked around for a little bit, and then it was kind of and I was in that camp too, where it was like, okay, well, I'll believe it when I see it, because it just sounds so bizarre. It sounds like I know it can work, but I don't know if the general public is either ready or willing to accept that, hey, one of our very limited 10 haunted houses is going to be devoted to WWE. And they're going to hear, they're not going to hear Wyatt Six, and they're not going to search Bray Wyatt, and they're going to hear WWE, and they're going to say, what, it's a wrestling house? Like, I was talking to my dad on the phone. He's like, oh yeah, I think I saw there's like a wrestling house or something. I'm like, yeah, there's more in there than just a wrestling. You're not going to walk in and it's like a ring. Like, it's just not what we're going to have.
People beating each other. Yeah, and I think that there was a lot of pushback for those who are not professional wrestling fans, to where they didn't understand what the Wyatt Six house was going to be, or how engulfed in horror that faction is. And it really, I feel, if you actually go back, there's a tweet out there from Bray where he said, I would love to do a Halloween Horror Nights house right around the Firefly Funhouse and stuff like that. That must have bent their ear a little bit, and a little bit to the fact that WWE and Peacock have been married, and that's a universal, and one thing leads to the other. But the absolute, I think the house itself is gonna be surprising, just like the weekend was surprising for me. I was like, how is the weekend gonna be horror based? And I was blown away. And I think that this is gonna be very much the same for horror fan, Halloween Horror Nights enthusiasts who don't know what they're gonna get when they go into this house. And I'm hoping that it's quite a love letter to Bray as well, with going through, before the Firefly Funhouse. Hopefully you go through his backwoods, go through that version of his character with the rocking chair that, has nobody rocking it and stuff like that. The Sister Abigail, the Firefly Funhouse, and then finally culminate with all the puppets coming to life as the Wyatt Six.
Yeah, that's what I'm really hoping for. And when it's to the point now where, if you've listened to this episode and you don't think horror and wrestling mesh, and you've seen the HHN homework video I've done on the Wyatt Six, if you're still not sold, at the very least, just assume it's an original house. Because that's really what it's going to be, I think, in my mind. Because you can build story in wrestling so much, but I can't point to a storyline that feels like a house. I could point to characters and moments and stuff like that, but I think the through line, the story, is going to be either conceived by, Horror Nights creative, or in conjunction with the Wyatt Six, or I always forget his real name, but Bo Dallas.
Bo Dallas, yeah.
But I think there's gonna be a story in there other than, hey, look, that's the Fiend. Hey, look, that's Bray. So go in with it being an original house, and then flesh it out after the fact.
Yeah, and I mean, if I may, just based on that, two things I will say or add to that is, one, last year, you might be able to help me. I think it was the Triplets of Terror.
Yep.
That had a very Wyatt feeling.
Yeah.
I almost thought maybe that was supposed to be last year, and they canned it, and they were like, well, we already have half of this built. Let's give it to the triplets of terror, because the story was obviously different with the birthdays and all that kind of stuff, but there, the characters, the kind of the backwoodsy, grow with the
it felt put together last minute almost too. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately,
yeah.
even if they're gonna say it wasn't, that was the vibe. Like, it was just like a bunch of random shit. It was like, okay, it's a collection house. Like, that's, for me, I'm like, okay, you last minute strolled through the aisles of the props warehouse and we're like, this, throw some dirt on it or whatever.
Okay,
like,
birthday party here, woods here, something here, whatever. Yeah,
Yep.
whatever's left over. I agree with you on that. And but if I were to, be the director, and I have heard, I've read all the dirt sheets, both in the Halloween Horror Nights enthusiast as well as professional wrestling dirt sheets is what they call them. So the rumor mill, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
I think it will take you through a journey of one man who was like in the backwoods. Maybe he went a little crazy. Maybe he started this Firefly Funhouse, which is like Mr. Rogers on steroids, or Pee-wee's Playhouse, I think is actually more like what that was. And then those come to life, and then these characters wreak havoc. I really think you could tell that entire story within the confines of one, haunted house.
Yeah, and that it is funny because the two worlds kind of aligned a little bit where, like you said, like dirt sheets and rumor mill, that's like the rumor boards of Universal for wrestling. Like it's one and the same. Like when you hear, whether it's through podcast page or, insiders for Universal Horror Nights, that's a dirt sheet in wrestling terms. And it's funny because we caught wind of all this stuff, this Bray Wyatt, this haunted house, and we've been talking about it for a while. And then I think it was only like maybe a month and a half ago, before it was official, but like wrestling dirt sheets started putting it out as well. And I was like, you guys are way behind. Like, and you could tell that they didn't really understand what it was, because I should have saved it, but there was like all the headlines were very like weirdly worded, and like, we know haunted house like HHN, but the way they said it was like they clearly didn't fully understand what Halloween Horror Nights was or what haunted houses are. And it was like, it's funny seeing the similarities of the two worlds of, you have HHN insiders and then you have dirt sheets, and they're one and the same.
And then you have the middle
products.
People like us, you and I, and other wrestling fans that they totally get it. They you don't even have any explanation. So you have those that are like, I don't understand why there's a wrestling house. You have the wrestling fans who are like, I don't understand why they're making a wrestling haunted house. And then you have us who is like, this is amazing. And why haven't they done this? Years ago.
Yep. But yeah, so I guess like to polish this off then, with this house, and this is one that I still like. Okay, it's Wyatt 6, but I still feel like you said there's gonna be a love letter of Bray. Like for me, I really want to see like Wyatt family stuff. Maybe that's just because I have a little bit more of a love for Wyatt family versus Firefly Funhouse, and I love all of them. But I just loved that early persona, the way he spoke. I like that vibe. So I'm hoping that that's in there. What do you like? I guess you can put it into the 3 or anything from Bray's career. Is there one thing that you're like, I need this in the house?
I think I'm kind of right there with you. Because the WWE they helped produce this. It is not unusual that you're gonna most likely have. I would hope the opening, that long walkway into the haunted attraction, Bray's original theme song, with maybe some fireflies like glistening throughout the walkway. And this is just fantasy booking for wrestling fans. So
exactly. Now just same terms,
But yeah, I'm with you. I would really like to see a lot of the Wyatt family be introduced. I vividly could see, and I'm sure it's going to be like, I could see a rocking chair rocking by itself, the backwoods, that all stuff. And then I want to see what they do with actually the Firefly Funhouse, because with the way that they structure these, these attractions, we're going to go right from like backwoods, Lake of Reincarnation, Sister Abigail, all that, and then boom, it's going to be bright and blue. And but again, they have the licensing rights, so that catchy Firefly Funhouse song will be echoing through your ears as you're walking through, and I could just see all of the puppets coming up. So those two things, but I'm with you on the seeing more of the Wyatt family than anything else.
Yeah, and it is funny, like, because it is, Wyatt Six and Bray, but we still don't know. Like, it could be no Wyatt family. So, like, I don't know what direction they're going to go. So I'm very excited with this almost opening up my Christmas present, feeling where I'm like, I don't know exactly what I'm going to get. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it. And I'm very excited to kind of see what we get in that house, because there are multiple avenues. And
wouldn't it be cool if at the end, like, they often do it with the Universal monsters, but like there's always a victor at the end of some of these. If it was like, it was either Uncle Howdy or the Fiend.
Yep.
Like,
I love that. Yep.
Oh my gosh, you come to the end and either the Fiend is standing there or Uncle Howdy's standing there.
Yep.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. I'm very excited. This is, I forget where it is in my hype list, but, the hype list episode will be the one that finishes off this 1 week until HHN Podathon, so you guys can tune in on that Friday for opening day. But what are other like houses that you're excited for this year?
I mean, like Terrifier is, I tatted it as soon as I saw it. So this is from like the first movie, and then I had met Damien Leone and had a great conversation with him before Terrifier was even as mainstream as it became. It was still kind of this underground, darker, like crazy movie that people were murmuring about and stuff. And of course, like, so Terrifier, by far, as soon as they announced it, I was elated because, and that's smart on Damien Leone and that whole crew, that they never sold their rights. So for Universal to get some of these other houses that everybody dreams of, a Scream and a this and that, like, they've got to jump through a lot of hoops to get the licensing rights and stuff. Whereas with them, I'm sure it was literally one conversation from the Universal production to Damien to say, hey, we want your creation here. And he's like, hey, if I can be a part of it, then I'm on board. But they put so much hype into how bloody and gory and everything it's going to be that I'm stoked for it. But anytime you get Jason in there, and for, again, us dirt sheet readers or rumor mill, I was shocked that they had a Jason house, because Friday the 13th is still completely under litigation, as I understand it. Yeah. So whoever was like, all right, well, can we just have the rights to Jason? I feel like that there's something like that, because it's just called Jason Universe. And it's going to, have like kind of years of his Friday the 13th era, but without actually calling it. And then I think the universe somehow has a 1 and a 3 built into it or whatever. So, but yeah, so fine. At some point, I feel like they were like, fine, keep just Friday the 13th, the name and the likeness and the rights, do what you will with it, but we want Jason, and then they're going to create this whole universe off of it. So, but really, I could go on and on. I wasn't really big into Five Nights at Freddy's initially, and then I watched the movie and I was like, oh my gosh, what have I been missing out on? And but I mean, this is just IP heavy, amazing year. By far the most excited I've been since, mainly I always get excited around their anniversary years. And I mean, this year I cannot wait.
Yeah, it's shaping up. This is going to be an awesome year. And the biggest terms that they've used is immersion, but also variety. There is truly something for everybody at this one. But I thank you again for coming on, kind of just bugging out over horror and wrestling, because we went for over an hour, and that's just barely scraping the surface of horror in wrestling. We could have done a whole dissertation on it. That's not as fun to listen to, but I just did want to shed some more light on, before we go to HHN and all the people that are listening now for the Podathon. Like, I just wanted to reaffirm this stance of, like, horror and wrestling are just pretty much one and the same. They are, if they're not in the same exact family, they are pretty damn close. So if you are that person that's very excited, like us, like, awesome. Like, I don't need to do anything to you. You're good. You're in. if you're one that's sort of tiptoeing, like, I don't know, maybe do 15 to 30 minutes of research. Watch some of this stuff, circle back and get excited, because it's going to be something magical. And if you're somebody that's completely tuned out, like it's not going to work, then all I can do for you is tell you to view it as an original, because you're going to enjoy it a little bit more if that's your stance on it. But these are not two completely separate entities by any means.
Yeah, and for those who don't think like that wrestling belongs into it, you're not going to see body slams and suplexes. It's nothing like that. There's not I would be surprised if there was a ring at all in it whatsoever.
Same. Yeah. There's not going to be a jump scare of like a ref sliding out to do
ding,
a 3
ding,
count.
Ding. Yeah,
like the bell
like
ring. So I think you could save the gimmick, which I wouldn't be against in a different sense. I think a couple years ago I pitched like I wanted like a haunted Mexican luchador style.
I was going to say, isn't that one of the movie posters from
It was in Slaughter, I think, but they did a luchador scare zone in Hollywood the year after I had said that. So somebody's listening. Because that's too bizarre of a concept for me to throw out there and magically have happen. So
absolutely.
Whoever's listening, I don't want credit, but I just want you to acknowledge me like the tribal chief.
Acknowledge me.
Throw the ones up. But again, thank you so much for jumping on. Why don't you just let everybody know where to find you on socials and stuff like that? And if you have any upcoming, obviously this comes out end of August, so in a week or so. But if you have any upcoming events, I know you're always doing something somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So there, off the top of my head, I'm not too sure. I have a lot of things in the works, a couple conventions and things like that. I can confirm I will be a part of like Arkansas Comic-Con. That's mid-September. But as far as wrestling shows, I'm not sure when this is coming out in correlation with my show dates, which is totally fine. Just follow me on Instagram as my main hub, at Hail Ryzin, HAILRYZIN. But again, you could look me up on YouTube and even through AEW's channel. If you want to see every one of those 0-40 matches, I'm sure they're up there. But find me there. Find me on, basically everywhere. I'm on X. I'm on Facebook. But really, I would say that I'm most active on my Instagram page.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you. And you've been on the show before. So when we do our sign-offs, we do my little happy Hans. I'm Nick. That's where you can do yours. And we're gonna get on out here. And the 1 week until HHN Podathon rolls on. Check back tomorrow. Again, I forget the order of these episodes, so I don't know what's coming to you tomorrow. It's a surprise for me at this moment, but you'll know what it is. So until next time, which is tomorrow, this is Nick.
I'm Ryzin.
Happy Hans. Thank you for listening to another episode of Fear and Beer, a Halloween Horror Nights podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on whatever streaming platform you are listening to us on. You can find us on all of our socials at Fear and Beer Pod.